Welcome. It's good to see everybody this morning. We thank you for coming. I am Jack Ballou, CPA from Arlington. I live in Congressman Joe Barton's district, and it is to him we want to speak this morning, and along with Senator Reed and the gambling industry. We thank you for coming. We have another gentleman on the program, and I will introduce those after I read a statement. I am a board member of Stop Predatory Gambling Texas. We have with us today also representatives from the national organization Stop Predatory Gambling and the Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission. And we will hear from those as we go along in the program. We're here to ask Representative Barton, Senator Harry Reid, and others in Congress to halt their efforts to legalize, for the first time, gambling on the internet. We're here raising a united voice against the casino industry and Washington special interest lobbyists who seek a long-term partnership with our federal government in promoting gambling. This arrangement would play our fellow citizens for suckers in exchange for profit and tax revenue. The bill Congressman Barton placed before Congress is bad for Texas and bad for America. It threatens our families and our children. It unrules the rule of law and is bad for our economy. We also take this opportunity to urge the Texas legislature to stay strong and resist efforts to expand gambling in Texas. We have bucked the expansion trend that so many other states have followed in recent years, and we're better off for it. Our economy outshines many others. We would not trade our economy for that of Louisiana, Mississippi, or Nevada. So many states have bought into the empty promises of the casino industry, yet still have budget deficits. We should not legalize casino-style gambling, and the Texas lottery should not be expanded to include internet gambling or machine-based games. We're here in Joe Barton's district, one of the most vibrant, profitable areas of family-friendly tourism in America. You've all seen evidence of that as you drove in today. Six Flags over here, Cowboy Stadium, the Rangers ballpark in Arlington, Hurricane Harbor. Year after year, the Texas legislature has turned back efforts to legalize casino gambling. We are proud, and I can speak personally since I'm a citizen of Arlington, of our strong family-friendly tourism economy here and in other places in the state. We know that casinos would forever change this landscape and take dollars away from these existing attractions. It's not surprising that Harry Reid of Nevada would support this legislation that the casino industry is working so hard for, but why Joe Barton? As a Texan and a constituent, I'm confident his support of this bill does not reflect the values of this district. Why is Congressman Barton partnering with Harry Reid and the casino industry in this effort to put gambling in every home in America? This bill benefits only the federal government and the out-of-state casino interest at the expense of Texas families. The gambling industry supports this effort because they know that once internet gambling is legalized, there's no going back. There's no end of opportunities. It will only expand if it's once introduced. When President and Texan George W. Bush signed into law the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, UIGEA, America made a choice to draw a line in the sand when it comes to gambling online. Make no mistake, despite the bill's title, of Mr. Barton's bill, which begins with these words: the Internet Gambling Prohibition, which is an interesting play on words. This bill guts UIGEA and is contrary to its intent. It is bad for our families, bad for the economy, and undermines the rule of law. I want to introduce now Dr. Earl Grinols, Distinguished Professor of Economics at Baylor University, to speak.
My perspective here is as a researcher, and I thought I would just give you a little update in 3 or 4 minutes. About a dozen years ago, the National Gambling Impact Study Commission issued its final report in which they recommended a moratorium on the expansion of gambling. They also recommended that we conduct more research on the social costs and consequences of gambling. It's ironic that both those recommendations were in the report because we have done a lot of research since then. Some of it has been my own, and we have found that gambling in general has social costs associated with it that exceed its benefits by a factor of approximately 3 to 1. Among those kinds of consequences that we have studied, that I personally have studied, are crime. And I want to report to you just a little bit of in-process work that I'm doing now on social consequences based on an Ontario Problem Gambling Center study, a $3.1 million study that they funded. It took place over 5 years. They sampled over 4,000 individuals in a location in Ontario. About 900 or so of the 19,500 observations that they collected in this study relate to problem and pathological gamblers. It's an immense study, and we have much more information in this study than has been previously available on a range of consequences. At the moment, I'm looking at a list of about 10, but let me just report a few things. As I say, this is research in progress, and I hope to have something finished hopefully by the end of the year. With respect to this grouping of individuals, we find that the groups that show up as problem and pathological gamblers based on their answers to survey questions which could classify them by a number of gambling screens, the Canadian Problem Gambler Index or the South Oaks Gambling Screen or some other screens, their rate of engagement in these activities that have harmful social consequences are significantly elevated. Let me just give you a few numbers and then summarize by explaining how I think this fits into what we need to know about gambling in general. Okay, these are increases relative to the non-problem gambler population. Crime, 171% higher. So that's like a 271% of the normal rate. Incarceration, 100% higher. But in addition, as I said, this study has for the first time information on other consequences. Serious injury, 97% higher. Sickness, 33% higher. Welfare use, 32% higher. Divorce, 26% higher. Bankruptcy, that's something we have studied in the past, 38% higher. And when you go to the data and ask, are these differences statistically distinguishable and significant? They clearly are. Many of these are at the 1% level, meaning if the two populations really were the same, what's the probability you would get these different outcomes by chance? The probability would be less than 1%. So a lot of this is highly significant on the numbers alone and statistically significant as well. So where does all this fit in from a perspective of a researcher like me? It would fit in the following way. When the initial research was begun that found social costs for gambling that exceeded its benefits, the industry said, well, the introduction and expansion of gambling is not the cause of this. It might be due to just that you've got an attraction now if it were a casino and you've introduced new travelers and visitors to the area. I have a paper published a couple years ago that looks at national park visitors to historic sites, national parks, recreational sites. There's absolutely no evidence in this data that they lead to increased crime rates. In fact, if anything, there's a slight tendency for them to reduce crime rates. Well, then the industry said, well, maybe it really wasn't due to the gamblers themselves, even if it is gambling, visitors and gambling that seem to be the problem. Maybe it's that they have other problems. They're alcoholics, they're drug abusers, they're mentally ill, there's something else going on. This data set allows us to distinguish all of those, and we also have in this data set those individuals who we can classify as drug abusers, alcohol abusers, a small sample of mentally ill. I have separated the data according to these classifications carefully and in a statistically significant, appropriate way. And what I can tell you is whether you are a drug abuser or a normal individual or mentally ill, or whether you're an alcohol abuser, if you treat those starting populations with problem gambling, the consequences in these 10 social costs rise. And so that is what we're doing right now, and I hope to have something more definitive. But this is, somebody like me gets excited. This is really good data, and this is very important information that we're gathering. So that's what I came to report.
Thank you. Okay. John.
John Kindt, Professor of Business and Legal Policy at the University of Illinois.
Thank you, Jack. As a matter of fact, I'm going to come over here and get out of your way. Well, thank you for inviting me from the University of Illinois. It's nice to be here and see so many old friends and so many people who are acknowledged in the United States International Gambling Report. This is a room full of experts, and it's good to see my old colleague, Professor Grinols here, formerly at the University of Illinois, but we couldn't afford to keep him, so which is to our detriment. But I'm going to simply reinforce what people said here. Back in 1995, we had congressional hearings, and I remember a law review article at the time that was reprinted in the congressional hearings, and it said, the title was something to the effect of National Security and the U.S. Strategic Economic Base, the effects of gambling. And we have seen that happen recently. Well, actually, that congressional hearing led to what has already been mentioned, the National Gambling Impact Study Commission, the U.S. National Gambling Impact Study Commission, which, as Professor Grinols indicated, called for a moratorium on the expansion of any type of gambling anywhere in the United States. Why? Because it doesn't work. It's economically detrimental. It's killing jobs all across this country. And specifically, the bipartisan National Gambling Impact Study Commission called for a continued criminalization of all internet gambling. Now, after 10 years, this report came out in 1999, and after almost a decade of hearings, after that, in 2006, the U.S. Congress passed, with an 80% bipartisan vote in the House, the U.S. Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act. And I and colleagues and people from the Justice Department testifying about organized crime testified in the congressional hearings leading up to that. And for our member of Congress, there were several law review articles cited in that. This is really a no-brainer. It's very understandable why Harry Reid wants to promote this. It's very understandable why Barney Frank wants to promote this. But why other people would be promoting this when, in fact, 80% of the House of Representatives voted for this Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act to strengthen the enforcement mechanisms of the U.S. Justice Department and the banking industry and other industries throughout the United States, really is a concern. Now, in 2010, the follow-up to the U.S. National Gambling Impact Study Commission, which was republishing a lot of original research, including research by Professor Earl Grinols, who is definitely a leader in this field. In 2010, the U.S. International Gambling Report, which is produced in large part at the University of Illinois and in concert with a lot of other colleagues at other academic institutions. The book came out and was called The Gambling Threat to Economies and Financial Systems, Internet Gambling. The title says it all. The financial threat to economies and financial systems, internet gambling. And in 2012, we came out with this book, The Gambling Threat to National and Homeland Security, Internet Gambling. Internet gambling is going to be the next big speculative financial bubble, which is going to really hurt Wall Street, which is going to hurt the economic recovery. We're not talking fun and games here. That is a PR misdirection by the gambling industry. We're talking about financial and economic security. We're talking strategic economics. From 1995, the original congressional hearings on this, to 2012 today. And we call it the red flag report on gambling, or a little red tie to emphasize that. For all of you, all the TV cameras here today, that's what it's here for. And I'm glad to see my colleague, Professor Grinols, is wearing red too. But the point is that this is a strategic economic situation. We're not talking about fun and games poker here. That's a misdirection by Harry Reid. It's a misdirection by the industry. We need to focus on the real impacts of this. Now, this is not just my opinion. This is the opinion of a lot of academics. It's the opinion of the bipartisan National Gambling Impact Study Commission, which said, keep the genie in the bottle. You can't regulate this. You've got to keep it prohibited. Keep the door shut. That is conclusive these guys wrote the book. And it says internet gambling is a threat to our national and homeland security because it's an economic threat. And others that agree with this include practically all of the National Association of Attorneys General. You can imagine maybe Nevada's Attorney General might not agree, but basically all of the National Association of Attorneys General agree that you've got to keep this criminalized. And so we're here today to encourage, educate, and inform the public on this. If we allow any type of internet gambling, it's going to be on every computer. It's going to be in every living room, at every workstation, at every school desk, on every cell phone. You're going to click your mouse, lose your house. Click your phone, lose your home. Internet gambling is a killer. It's a job killer. It's an economy killer. And I think I probably made that point pretty well here today. So this is why I think there's such an outpouring of people from all around the country, experts who have flown in for this particular press conference. And thank you for inviting me here today. It's good to see you, Jack, and nice to see you again.
All right, now we have Stephen Reeves. For your legal counsel, what is it?
Legislative counsel.
Legislative counsel for the Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission.
Thank you, Jack. It's good to be with y'all this morning. I just want to add a few points here to what you've already heard. And the first one is, as a Christian Life Commission, we're concerned about our families and our kids. And what we know about the internet is there is no surefire way to stop underage gambling online. There's no device has been yet created to certify someone's age online. So that's one of our number one concerns, that you're not going to be able to prohibit kids and underage folks from gambling online. And then the impact to our families is when their parents get in trouble from this activity, the effect on kids and the family. We know throughout this country that divorce rates go up when gambling moves in. Gambling addiction causes so many problems, financial problems, that have dire consequences to our families. So that's something we're really concerned about. Second, I want to talk about how this undermines the rule of law. I've heard that said, and Congressman Barton and others say this is just poker. This is nothing else but poker. And as a matter of fact, poker isn't really gambling; it's a game of skill. And my response to that is, it's poker today, but we know it's something else tomorrow. The casino interests wouldn't be supporting this if it weren't about getting every form of gambling on the internet. That's what they want, and once this door is open, it will not stop. It will be very, very fast. I think we can talk to any state who's opened the door to gambling, and it only spreads. It never goes back. Second, while Congressman Barton and others say poker is a game of skill and not a game of chance and not gambling. In Texas, Attorney General Greg Abbott disagrees, and that's what's important here, is that according to our Attorney General, poker is gambling. There is chance involved, and you're placing a bet. And so if this were to pass, who knows the consequences for Texas gambling laws. This is clear in Texas, and we need to keep it clear. And finally, on this point, in 2011, the FBI indicted 11 executives of 3 major online poker companies. Names of companies you might recognize: Full Tilt Poker, Poker Stars, Absolute Poker. These are big names in that industry. They're indicted on charges of money laundering and bank fraud. They're accused of bribing some banks and tricking others. These executives were accused of running an elaborate criminal network that prosecutors described as a Ponzi scheme. These are not the kind of companies and kind of individuals we want back into the U.S. operating legally. Why would we reward such criminal behavior? This is not the industry that we want to support and promote and profit from. And finally, a point about the Texas lottery. Something that my organization is always keeping an eye on and concerned about. And one thing we've seen nationally as this bill tries to move through Congress, we've got individual states trying to get in on the game and legalize internet gambling and profit from it for their own state lotteries. And that's not going to work here either. We're not going to stand for that in this state. We've turned back expansion time after time, and we don't want to see the Texas lottery move into the realm of internet gambling or machine gambling, no matter what happens in Congress. And so that's something we want to stress to our legislators as we move into a legislative session in January. Thank you all so much for being here, and I'll turn it back over to Jack. Thank you.
All right, now we have Les Bernal, executive director, right, of the national organization Stop Predatory Gambling.
All right. Well, I think you've heard a very compelling case today. I mean, the facts have been clear on this issue, not just for internet gambling, but on the issue of government gambling for more than 40 years. Okay? There's no dispute. The government policy of predatory gambling has failed. It's failed. It's one of the biggest public policy failures of the last 40 years. Okay? So we're here today because it's time that government, instead of adding more forms of gambling as part of a government program, it's time that government pulled back from being in the gambling business. And the federal government to date has never been in the gambling business. And if it embraces internet gambling, it will be the first foray of the federal government plunging into the gambling business. And our country needs more. We're in the midst of a presidential race today. We're talking about how to expand the middle class, how to provide opportunity for Americans. This is the antithesis of providing opportunity for citizens. This is the antithesis of expanding the middle class. This is a bill that shrinks the middle class. So our message as a national organization that's trying to get the issue of government's failed policy of gambling on the national agenda is you, as citizens, need to weigh in on this issue. They're looking at doing it in a lame duck session, potentially even coming back next year to trying to do it. So you need to weigh in on this issue that matters to every family in the country, and you have the power to make a difference on it. So thank you all for being here. And Jack, thanks for the work of Stop Predatory Gambling Texas.
Likewise to the national producers. It is a press conference, and we need to, suppose, open this up for questions and discussion as needed to have a good follow-up with this, on these matters.
Sure. It will be available afterwards. So thank you very much, Jack, and everyone for coming today.
Thank you for coming.